Hi everyone, I'm Blight. Before we get started, if you enjoyed today's narration, don't be afraid to like and subscribe, or leave a comment down below. It would help the channel, and I would sincerely appreciate it. Now, let's get into tonight's narration. And remember, keep the lights on, folks. Trees could move in a forest every night, and you probably wouldn't even notice. There are thousands of the things in even a small forest. You couldn't possibly know the position of every one. Sure, if your go-to spot had moved, you might be suspicious. But even then, if you don't go often, you'd probably just think you misremembered. Forests have few exact landmarks. It's the same all around. You'd be forgiven for not noticing the change, for not noticing that the trees are alive. But when they're at the edge of your window, bridging between the vast empty black of the night and the safety of your own home, you'll notice. When the outside world can tap upon your glass, you notice those things. A child cries. "I think I heard a noise at the window." The mother consoles. "It's just a branch in the breeze, honey. Go back to sleep." You hear that and feel relief from the explanation. I hear that and feel fear. What could be worse than a tree at the window? A tree that was not there yesterday. I've lived on the edge of Inwoods for over a decade. It acts as the border to the west of our small town. There's my street, with Inwoods just beyond the back fencing. The woods continue for miles until the next town. They attempted to chop down the trees a few years back to expand our quaint neighborhood. The project was canceled after just a few days in favor of expanding east instead. What made them change their minds? What did they find that made them want to head in the exact opposite direction? They're afraid of something in those trees, deep within the roots, manifesting in the bark, perhaps the leaves themselves, as they gracefully sway unsuspectingly. They have every right to be terrified. We all do. But I wasn't always scared of Inwoods. Quite the opposite, actually. I had a friend. Her name was Emily. We used to play in the woods often as children, climbing the trees, building dens. Nobody knew that place like us. If trees had moved back then, we'd have known about it. I wish I could still hold those memories fondly, but knowing what I know of the woods now, I cannot in good conscience look back and smile. One memory does stick out to me in particular, though, a special destination that I always held near and dear to my heart. A few minutes' walk through the woods, staying on the dirt path and keeping to the clearings. There's a big tree. It stands alone, proudly, as if there is something different about it. A forest, by definition, is a large group of trees, but this one didn't feel like part of it. It was a tree in a forest, yes, but it was not part of the forest it resided in. This was its own thing. It was special. It quickly became our go-to spot, and one day, we marked it as our own by carving our initials into the bark. W.E. Emily went missing in those same woods just a few days later. It was our last time together. I think about it a lot. I was 12 at the time. My parents didn't let me join the local search parties. They told me I'd be scared. I convinced them to let me join just once, and my reaction to what I saw seemed to prove them right. They thought it was a sign of my trauma, but it wasn't. It was the cause. The big tree was gone. Where our initials once etched into a monument of nature itself was now nothing. Emptiness. Of course, nobody knew the woods like me and Emily. Trees don't move. Everyone told me. You're scared. It's okay. We all are. But trees don't move. It only took me 14 years to prove them wrong. The woods began their creeping a little over a month ago. I was getting ready for bed. Yet, as my glance fell over the window, I noticed a tree over the fence. One that was not there before. The first tree to take a midnight walk. At least, the first I had noticed in over a decade. I found myself watching expectantly, but expectant of what, I'm not sure. I thought maybe I could catch it moving, morphing in the moonlit nighttime air. But it just stood there, staring back at me. Make no mistake, this tree was staring. No eyes to see, but staring all the same. It felt like it wasn't a part of the forest. A tree in a forest that it does not belong to is a curious thought to some, but a feeling I'm used to. Every night, when I went to bed, I would look out the window. More and more trees from the forest seemed to inch closer to my property. Each time, they stopped feeling like a part of the woods. Their membership to that club ends the moment they begin to move. They are their own collective once they do. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't sure what to say. People thought I was crazy for implying that trees move as a child. Imagine what they'd think if I said it now. But a fact not spoken is a fact all the same. There is a horrifying thing one learns about forests when they begin to shift. They make noise. I wish I could say that it was simply a rustling or creaking as they reroute to their new location. That would almost be peaceful. They make noises that get burnt into your brain. They screech. They roar. They groan in pain. Their loud whispers whimper through the air every night, reminding us that they are on the move. Their mournful lullaby does everything but help me sleep. They distill a fear in me that I haven't truly felt for 14 years. I knew this was connected to Emily's disappearance all that time ago. I'm not the only one that hears the noises, although I'm the only one who truly listens to their meaning. Many of the neighbors have put their houses up for sale already because they cannot stand the nightly symphony of nature. That's what they call it. Nature. Nothing about this is natural. I knew the trees were specifically targeting me after just a week. Nobody else had trees at their window, except me. Once at my home, at the edge of what I call my own, they stopped getting closer. They moved every night, continuing their echoes, but they didn't break through my walls to reach me. The gentle tapping of branches upon my window had an eerie rhythm to them, as if someone were knocking, asking to be let in. I could almost feel their roots below the ground, beating like veins in flesh. It only took 2 nights of that before I decided to chop the branches. I knew they'd just grow back or move to a new position, but I needed to try it. That's when I discovered why the expansion of our town was canceled. Blood dripped from the branches as I cut them. This was not sap. This was red, oozing blood. It smelt metallic, and groans could be heard from deep within the forest with every chop of my tools. I had become the conductor of this symphony. For every chop, a loud, horrific screech echoed throughout the woods. It only took 5 before I couldn't continue. You may have noticed that I haven't referred to it as Inwoods for a while. That's because, as far as I'm concerned, there is no longer an Inwoods. There isn't a single tree that has remained in its spot. They have all chosen to disconnect themselves from Inwoods by moving inwards, towards our town and my life. I'd considered selling with my neighbors, but despite all the new questions I had, this was the closest I had ever come to answering Emily's disappearance. Last week, I had a dream. I hadn't dreamt in a while, or even slept much for that matter. I dreamt of Emily, now an adult, playing among the trees. We had gone into the woods together to remind ourselves of our childhood. Isn't this fun? Emily spoke with an unclear voice in this dream, almost groans, but I could still understand her. This is, I said, vaguely aware of the real world, acutely knowing that I was sleeping. I just wish you could really be here. Perhaps I never left. Perhaps I've been trying to find my way back to you. We stared at each other before she spoke again. Perhaps you can join me. I jolted awake to the sound of the tapping at my window and the distant choir of the forest. Yet, something about this tapping felt different, almost more excited than usual. It scraped along my window after each one, as if to no longer ask to come in, but instead to invite me outside. I peeked through the window. Many of the trees had moved away from my home. Only one was right outside. I was still tired, and my vision felt crooked, but I could clearly make out the letters engraved into the bark. W-E. For a second, I felt calm. I felt the fear of the past 14 years drift away. Emily? I spoke aloud. The forest responded with whispers that felt more gentle this time. I made my way downstairs and out the back of the house. I walked right up to the big tree and placed my hand over the initials. For just a moment, there was peace. The groans stopped, as did the tapping of the window. I felt a pressure tightening in my hand at the surface of my palm and fingertips. A creaking sound came not from the forest, but from this very spot on the big tree. It was growing around my hand. It wanted me to join it. It wanted me to become part of the woods. My veins tangling with the roots. My thoughts tangling with the leaves. I pulled away, bits of skin tearing from the outer layers of my hand. The pain I felt was shared. The creaking returned from the forest, louder than I had ever heard it. The forest is not Emily. Emily would not put me in a position like that. She wouldn't ask me to give up my life to become something I'm not. I believe the woods have tangled with Emily's memories. That which she was fond of is now what the trees are fond of. Pieces of her mind scattered across Inwoods the day she vanished, but her soul is not there. A collective network of trees have been given the gift of thought. And it's terrifying. I've lived in this apartment for almost 2 years, and until last night, I thought I knew every inch of it. It's a small, one-bedroom place, just a decent spot that's close to work. The building itself is one of those old Milltown buildings, with an apartment up top and businesses on the lower level, with a hallway that separates the two. It's where the business owners would live when the town was first established. It's in the downtown area of a very, very small town. Nothing exciting. When I first moved in, the landlord, Shane, gave me a blueprint of the unit. A very old blueprint. At the time, I thought it was strange. You see, it's normal to get a layout print when in the process of renting just to see the floor plan. But who gives a blueprint showing the electrical layout, the water line, basically the entire construction layout for a one-bedroom apartment? It was weird. But what made it even more odd was Shane himself. He's always been off. You know the type. Quiet. Always watching. Never really says much unless he absolutely has to. He wears Dahmer-style glasses and combs his hair over a hole in his toboggan. He's balding. I'm Southern. Shut up. He dresses in blue short-sleeve coveralls and adorns himself only in the jewelry that is a few ink pens in his pocket and a very musty odor. The most intimidating part about him is his height. The man is 6'11". Not joking. Anyway, the first day I meet him, he just stood there, staring at me for a moment, before handing over the keys from his Hulk-sized hand, muttering something about making sure everything's in order. Even when he gave me the blueprint, he wouldn't look me in the eye, just said, "You'll want to hold on to this." Like it was some kind of secret. I almost laughed at how serious he was being. I should have asked more questions then, but I'm a dumb welder and I do what I have to get by. Last night, well, trying to fix a leaky pipe under the sink, because Shane's phone for some reason always goes to voicemail when shit goes wrong, I noticed something strange. My hand slipped, and the wrench clanged loudly against the wall behind the cabinet. The sound it made, it wasn't right. It was hollow. For a second, I thought I imagined it, but curiosity got the better of me. I knocked on the wall, and sure enough, there was an empty space behind it. I thought it was kinda odd, but I tried not to let it bug me too much. However, I've read a lot of horror stories, and seen a lot of videos of people finding hidden rooms in their homes, so I didn't sleep much after that. This morning, I pulled out the blueprint that Shane had given me. No hidden rooms, no extra spaces. It was all supposed to be solid, but that hollowed sound kept gnawing at me, so I grabbed a hammer and started chipping away at the wall. Behind it, there was a door. A small, old, wooden door, barely 4 feet high, painted the same color as the wall so it blended in perfectly. I checked the blueprint again. No mention of a door. No mention of a hidden room. Nothing. I can't stop thinking about how weird Shane was when he gave me that blueprint. Why would he go through the trouble of giving me this if it didn't even show this? Why didn't he tell me about the door? Why didn't he look me in the eye? I don't know what's behind it, but something about it feels very wrong. Like it's been waiting all this time, just hidden till now. I'm gonna get to the shop. I got too many orders coming through to worry about it. People need their drive lines and their tanks and trailers repaired. But maybe somebody here knows something about old buildings or can help. Anyway, if anything comes of it, I'll let y'all know. "7 p.m. Friday, at the bar. One little drink won't hurt," said Kylie, sealing her fate and condemning herself to the worst night of her life.
10 p.m. Friday, in the car of a stranger.
I think you passed my street. She was very sure, in fact, that her street had been passed. She'd been looking for it in between the waves of nausea and had seen the sign. She had some doubt. After all, her vision was swimming in and out, so she wasn't sure she had read it correctly. But then again, she had been rather close to it, her head being pressed to the window the way it was. Hey, sir? Did you hear me? I think you passed my... But then, she was interrupted by his large hand smacking her hard across the face. Kylie hadn't noticed in the bar with all those people standing around just how big this guy was. She might not have accepted his offer of a ride if she had noticed. She sat back in her seat in stunned silence, unable to process what was happening.
10:26 p.m. Driving further into nowhere.
Where are you taking me? She asked, after marshaling up her courage. She was rewarded with another smack, harder than the first. Before she could think of how to talk her way out of the situation or to escape, her entire world had faded to black, perhaps because of the harsh slap or the drugs she'd been unwittingly fighting off all night. She'd never know. When she woke up again, she'd be unable to remember the ride at all.
1 a.m. Saturday. Waking up chained to a bed.
Hello? Kylie called out softly. Her head was spinning, and she didn't know where she was. Even the thought of sitting up made her want to be sick. She knew she wasn't home, but she couldn't think of anywhere else she could possibly be, unless she'd been having a terrible dream about being abducted. But that couldn't be true, could it? The last thing she could clearly recall, she'd been supposed to meet up with a friend at a bar. Everything after that was hazy. Surely, if she wasn't in her own bed, she must be on someone else's bed. A friend, or worst case scenario, she'd gotten a little tipsy and was at the home of a one-night stand. In either case, someone would be around. Hello? She called again, a little louder.
Hello?
Someone responded this time. There were too many things about that one word for her to process in the state she was in. It was a deep male voice, and it was warm, welcoming. It was also not coming from beside her in the bed, but from the other side of what sounded like a rather large room. Kylie tried to open her eyes, not sure why she hadn't started with that. Then, she realized they had been open. Everything was just dark. Who are you? She asked, trying to sound braver than she felt.
A friend. 3:30 a.m. Talking to a friend.
I wish I could see you. Her friend had taught her a lot. In the couple hours they had known one another, they had bonded. Dire situations have a way of forcing people who might ordinarily have nothing in common to become the best of allies when facing an enemy. At the end of the day, friendships were all about survival, and Kylie's new friend had taught her a lot about surviving in her new prison. He'd been there for her when she had been sick, and when she had first discovered the chain around her ankle. He'd calmed her down and answered her questions to the best of his ability. He told her about their situation. There was one man and one woman. He wasn't sure what their relationship was. He'd thought once that they were brother and sister, what with them looking alike. But he'd also seen them do things to one another that no siblings should be doing. The man hit harder, but the woman kept a person longer, which was crueler in its own way. As Kylie listened to him describe in only the faintest detail the sorts of things he'd seen in his time there, she felt like being sick all over again, and once or twice she had been. She was scared. She'd never been a tough person, and judging from her friend's assessment of the situation, she didn't think that she'd last very long at all. All things considered, she wasn't sure that she'd want to. Dying would be preferable to her. She didn't want to linger during years of torture like her new friend must have, seeing others come and go. He sounded weak, tired, and in great pain. She never wanted that to be her. The one small thing she would have asked was that she could see her new friend's face. With all the discussion, she felt like she knew him, and she'd rather his face be the last one she saw than the face of her captor. Her eyes had adjusted to the dark somewhat, and she was now sitting on the bed facing the direction his voice came from. But even squinting, she could see no more than a vaguely human-like shape in the dark.
Maybe someday you will,
he answered sadly.
4 a.m. in the dark.
How long do we have?
It varies, but usually they don't come until morning. 5 a.m., not long before sunrise.
I have to ask, is there any way out? Kylie had dreaded asking this question, because she had a feeling she would not like the answer. If there was a way out, surely he'd have taken it. Silence greeted her. Hello?
You could try to fight, but...
But what?
Let me give you a piece of advice. If you fight, do it now, when they come for you. If not, you'll be waiting a long time. For as weak as you feel now, you're not likely to get any stronger. Not here. 6:30 a.m. Waiting.
In her hand, she held a key. It was the spare key to her friend's apartment, and it hadn't been on her keyring yet. If it had been, it would have been in her purse, wherever that creep had taken it. Luckily, he hadn't checked her pockets before chaining her to the filthy bed. It made for a poor weapon, but it was sharp at the end, and it was better than nothing. She'd taken her friend's advice. The captors had keys on them at all times. If she could bring him down, she'd be free. If she could at least hurt him, he'd probably kill her quickly out of rage, and maybe that was the best she could hope for. She'd make her move now, and go for the eyes. She laid on her side, pretending to be asleep, waiting for the footsteps to get closer. She tensed as she felt his weight on the bed, but then she lunged.
6:17 a.m. Lying in blood.
Kylie. She was too tired to answer. The voice came back, louder and more persistent.
Kylie, you need to get up. You need to unchain yourself. It's now or never. You took down the bigger one, but if his woman comes down here before you've moved, you're not going to be strong enough to fight again. Get up, Kylie.
She had won the fight, but only barely. The initial shock and the blood loss from losing the first eye had been enough to weaken him, but that was only a relative term. He'd still been strong enough to beat her bloody, which he had continued to do until his last breath, even as she'd been stabbing away at him with her sad little key. I'm sorry. I can't. She had tried to tell him. She wasn't a good fighter. She wasn't strong. She let the blackness take her again.
11 a.m. Standing behind her new friend.
Coming to, she'd been relieved. The woman hadn't found her yet. She'd thought there would still be time, to unlock the two of them and escape together. He hadn't spoken to her, though, not since the sun had risen. She stood behind the other bed, looking at the shape under it.
I'm going to get you out, okay?
She pulled back the sheet from the form and screamed. She jumped away from the frail body with its discolored, pale flesh, causing the lifeless head to fall to one side. She watched with horror as his eyeball fell out and rolled across the floor. She rushed up the stairs, more eager than ever to be home. It wasn't just that her friend was dead. It was that he had obviously been dead for a long time.
It does not matter what I say or add to my testament. You and the others will not believe me, and perhaps it is better this way. The saint in me feels that my being behind these walls is a small price to pay. But the devil ever seeks freedom, does he not? Very well, Mr. Wells. I shall tell you what really happened that night.
It was late April, year 2005, when the now late Mr. Edward Marquise agreed by letter to allow me to view that strange oddity he had secreted away from the rest of the world. He simply referred to it as the mask in all of our long correspondence to one another. To say that I was excited to finally view the object would be a gross understatement. It wasn't until I got to his mansion and seen the grave expression on his face that I questioned my motives to see the object and hopefully purchase it. I have always had a bit of an obsession with occultism and the macabre antiques tied to it. I have heard stories of the mask, rumors with no real meaning, that is, until one led me to Edward Marquise. He at first disavowed all knowledge of the object, or the cult that was tied to it. It took months of prying at the old man to finally hear his confession, and it seemed thick of regret. I was ever the fool in those days. Edward met me at the door, stating that he had called his staff away for the evening, so that it would just be the two of us. I remember feeling that my friend had an overbearing taste for the dramatic. He offered to show me his gallery of artworks and curios, an offer I accepted, for we had the same tastes, it seemed. After about an hour of dusty tomes and paintings, we retired to his study for brandy. In this time, I tried greatly not to ask about the mask, or press my viewing of it, and my patience was waning. When I had finally brought up the mask, he was startled, swearing off all knowledge of agreeing to allow me to see it. After several moments of discourse about the dangers that it possessed, warnings I now wish I had heeded, he took out a small chest from beneath his desk. It was an elaborate affair, lacquered ebony and polished iron bands. Small etchings covered the box's entirety. I found it odd that the box had no lock on it, yet had a ring for one. The small things that I dismissed astound me now. He sat there for a while, staring at the box, then started.
What do you want to know of the mask, my dear boy? What have you heard?
So, I recounted the little snippets of lore that I had been able to glean together in my years of study on the cult. He laughed at me.
They believe there to be a fallen angel of sorrows that would save all of mankind from sadness, grief, and despair. I pity their naivete. They also believe there to be another entity, a demon of hatred that would always battle with the angel. This mask was made as a vessel for these entities, in hope that they could pull them here, into our world.
He placed the box upon the table before me. and slid it forward. Simply, he commanded,
"Look and see."
And I was compelled to obey. The lid seemed heavy, unnaturally so, as if it weighed several times more than it should. But still, it slid open with wanting. Within the box was a parcel wrapped in linen. I glanced up to my host for confirmation that this is what I sought. He nodded and smiled. It was his first smile since I arrived, and I thought I saw moisture build in his eyes. With nervous hands and almost giddy heart, I carefully, slowly unwrapped the linen. What was within was an object of horror and beauty. Simple, yet complex in its simplicity. It was a mask, smooth, with no real facial features, save 2 eye holes. One side was pure white, the other was black. Beneath each eye was a line of the opposing color, as if it were weeping, and the white side had a black smile colored in, while on the black side had a white frown. In essence, it resembled one of those comedy and tragedy theater masks. But it was so much more. It chilled me to the bone and elicited a yelp for joy. I was so entranced by the mask, lulled into its beauty, I almost didn't hear Mr. Marquis weeping. I remember asking what was wrong, but my eyes didn't leave the mask until his reply was forced and choked with laughter.
He made me do it, boy. I didn't want to do it, but he made me."
As he spoke, a red drop landed upon my hand, drawing my attention to the ceiling. I vividly remember the taste of bile as I retched into my mouth at the sight. 5 bodies, assumedly the staff, were chained tight against the ceiling, ripped to shreds, their faces locked in expressions of horror. The sound of scraping metal drew my eyes to Edward. His face, it was twisted, frozen in a snickering grin, mouth wide, teeth black, and he was crying, but his tears were black. He looked like the mask, or rather, half of the mask, and he held a long knife in his hand, drying blood still on it.
"Isn't it lovely? They will never feel sorrow again."
He began to laugh, but his voice was different, as if it were someone else.
"So, how about it, Nicholas? You want a smile for Ed?"
He asked, just before he lunged at me. I scrambled out of the way, for some reason grabbing the box. As he fell to the floor, I started at him and began bashing his head in. What happened next is vague, and I can just barely remember that I was laughing. It was several hours later when the police picked me up on the side of the highway, covered in blood, clutching my mask in my hands.
"Your mask, Mr. Jacobs?" "Why, yes, Mr. Wells. It was my mask after all. Now tell me, Michael, want a smile for me?"